the Top Fuel Challenge. I've called it something different every time I say it. The PepBoys NHRA Top Fuel All-Star Call Out, whatever. We didn't get to see it come to conclusion, right? We did not see finality with this particular shootout. The remainder of the elimination rounds were down to 4 cars, will be contested alongside the funny car version of the All-Star Call-Out at the NHRA US Nationals later this season in Indianapolis, Indiana. But let's talk about what we did get to see. Let's start with pre-race build-up hype, going from Wednesday when we did our last show to today. What did you guys think of the build-up and the initial kind of wave of momentum and interest and enthusiasm in the call-out?
I honestly think it had to be less than what we expected because of the weather. They had to move everything from the starting line and all that. We got that email, right, with this whole schedule of what they're going to do. Well thought out, well planned. A lot of this is going to happen in front of the fans and at optimum timing or whatever. And then everything has to be done in the whatever their club is, their top eliminator club. I'm not sure.
Yes, that's it. Top eliminator club.
Yeah. Inside there with, minimal fan engagement, had to be filmed really quick. I don't think Doug Clinton he wasn't able to make it, I guess, because of the scheduling. So that was a little bit, disappointing. They were just behind the 8 ball the whole time. Like you said, all this build up, and then you don't get to do a lot of the pre-race presentation. Then again, it was a little bit truncated on Saturday because of the late weather move out. So it was hard, but I think it'll make Indy even better. I actually kind of like the idea of having both of them at the same event. So I think that actually maybe moving forward, that's something that they could look at. I think having both the shootouts at the same time is a little less. It takes a little bit of the focus away from each individual one, but it kind of pairs the fuel classes together and gives even more bang for the buck for the fans.
I like the presentation of it though. And they were showing kind of behind the stage and everybody kind of chumming it up, right before they, of course, call them out, And I thought Brian Loans did an exceptionally great job on the stage.
Did we see, and forgive me for not knowing, and I wasn't able to watch all the television broadcasts. T, were you able to watch the NHRA broadcast on Fox or any of the
I was in and out because I was working on stuff all weekend. But,
I'm wondering a little bit
I have to go back and watch that part of it.
I compare and contrast it, and obviously I know these are apples and oranges to some extent, but I was watching Chopped on Food Network last night. It's one of my favorite shows, to be honest. And it's crazy how quickly the production team at Food Network can introduce you and romance you and seduce you and have you falling in love with one of the contestants. It's unbelievable. And it's literally done in 2 or 3 sound bites. It's hey, what inspired you to be here this weekend? And you're going to get this passion-laced tirade from some chef that's my mom taught me how to cook before, we encountered hard times or whatever. There's some memorable emotional tale. And the next thing you know, you're cheering for this guy. But then you kind of see how they're a little haphazard in the kitchen and they're kind of focusing on that. And the guy cut his finger and blah, blah, blah. They do a great job of getting you invested in that. And I felt like that was a little bit lacking. We got a lot of perspective on what's happening right now, but I don't think we got a lot of backstory. Who is Mike Salinas? Who is Leah Pruitt? Who is Sean Langdon? Are these people in the show?
Struggled with, right?
Yeah, sure.
They've always struggled with.
But they've got what's interesting now is they've got 6 months. They expect
everybody to know.
Yeah, they've got 6 months now till it's completed. For instance, Brittany Force got 6 months to choose her opponent for.
Yeah, that's wild to think about.
Indy. Right? So I wonder if we'll see any more of that kind of development or build up.
Let's talk about the call out. The call out specifically, as you said, truncated.
I'd make my own video.
Yeah, that's my point. I honestly think
I would make my own production video. That
kind of brings me to an interesting point too. I was thinking about, and it's something that I would like to hear more about. What do the drivers really think about this? What was their reaction to it? I'd like to get some perspective on that, how they thought it went, and is it something they're excited about moving forward into the future, or was it just a pain in the ass, something they would rather not do? What's their perspective?
I think you ought to be able to call out the whole field. I think that
but not just the guys that qualify for the thing. Yeah. I'm going to tell you, I've got a simple fix, and and I'm not trying to say that we've done it once before, but I think that there's a certain amount of square peg round hole happening with this call out thing. Like my takeaway from it, watching it and really trying to study it and examine how everybody's behaving. And I actually asked this question to one of the participants last week here on the show, Justin Ashley. How uncomfortable is this? Because it looks pretty awkward. Like I can see it on everyone's face. Like, the pressure that was on Steve Torrence. I mean, I think there was more pressure on Steve Torrence this past weekend to be the asshole that calls out the struggling Leah Pruitt than really anything else. Like you could see it was weighing on him. He knew that the obvious pick was Leah Pruitt. She's had a little bit of a rough start to the 2022 campaign. She's got a lot on her plate, right? New marriage. They got a brand new team. They got 2 cars, a lot of moving parts, all these sponsorship relations. And I mean, anybody, that's a lot to unpack every weekend. And I think that the obvious choice for whoever had first pick, you're picking Leah. I don't think it was a huge secret, but it still put a ton of pressure on Steve to be that guy who's going to call out the girl who's kind of having a rough year. And this is a guy who's already struggled to be the bad guy because he's a great human being, right? And what it told me, and I'm curious to get your guys' opinion on this, but we're not dealing with pro wrestlers out here. Like arguably my favorite pro wrestler of all time died earlier this week, right? And I was watching old clips. Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, rest in peace, brother, man. Rest in peace, bad guy. I'll never forget you. And I don't think the wrestling world ever will either, because I think he was one of the guys that was completely comfortable being a bad guy. He leaned into it, and he was so charismatic, and he had such a big personality that people love. He was one of the first ever widely accepted villains in pro wrestling. I mean, typically villains got booed, right?
And was able to have a long career because of that, probably.
Absolutely.
These guys that are willing to buy into it because there's so few are able to have that longevity.
But let's be honest.
Another good guy, another face. He'd just blended into the crowd and faded away.
But that said, Steve Torrence ain't Scott Hall, right? And neither is Mike Salinas. I mean, because there's some, I think Scott Hall, we got to talk about this a moment because it's worth unpacking. Scott Hall is 6'7". I don't know how much he weighed, but this guy's a monster. It's not real hard to be an authentic bad guy, right? It's not real hard to throw your toothpick in the face of the camera, right? I mean, it's not real hard to do that because it's like you look like you could be a bad hombre. Like, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you got the chest hair and jacked and whatnot. I mean, you got the gold chains. You look like a badass. So it's easy for him. It's authentic. Like, I'm not saying that he wasn't playing a character, obviously playing a character. It's not even his real voice that he was using, right? It was just shtick. I get it. But it was an authentic, believable shtick. And I think the NHRA, unknowingly, not on purpose, right? They kind of put their whole group being a square peg, and they tried to stuff in it a round hole because you're asking Brittany Force to be Nikki Bella. She's not, right? And that's not a shot or anything, but like, these people aspired their whole lives. Nikki Bella, Scott Hall, John Cena, they aspired their whole lives to be the next Hulk Hogan, to be the next big on-stage personality. They knew that it was as important to be able to do an interview and to cut a promo as it was to be able to do a suplex. Drag racers, like, Brittany Force, Mike Salinas, these folks grew up idolizing Larry Dixon, Kenny Bernstein, Don Perdome. Now, there was those of them, John Force, that were able to cut a promo, but it was really all about, I mean, how many times have we heard, I let the scoreboards do the talking for me, right? I mean, drag racing, it's all about letting the scoreboards do the talking for you. And I kind of feel like everybody that was involved in the PepBoys All-Star Call-Out, in a way, I felt as excited for them as I was to see them race for $80,000 and get this moment in the sun. They deserved it, and there's so many positives. And I'm not trying to be negative. I'm trying to improve or have a discussion, an intelligent discussion around it. I think they were kind of thrown to the wolves. I think it was we need you guys to, call each other out. And I think they were asking a lot of this group of people, completely out of their wheelhouse. And Justin Ashley, again, that was what I was trying to say. Justin Ashley, last Wednesday, he said, Wes, I'm glad you brought that up because yes, this is awkward. It's odd. None of those guys got into drag racing to be in that situation. Right now, if you get into Street Outlaws, it's a different breed of people, but here's the thing, even Street Outlaws,
you have coaching and experienced people that can help you with that.
Instant
I don't
fix.
know if coaching is the word, but
instantaneous fix.
Yeah.
Draw names. drawing chips out of a hat, you would have gotten, like, if I love a king for the day opportunity, but I love what we have done historically with the World Door Slammer Nationals down in Orlando in 2020 and 21. You bring all those cars, all those Top Fuel cars are in the lanes. You make a huge production out of closing the lanes. I'd have had a camera and like one of those caution tape deals or some sort of special fabric that we rolled across the top of staging lanes, and they're closed. No cars come, no cars go. We brought 8 Top Fuelers out here. They're in the staging lanes. You better bring these mothers to the staging lane ready to run a world record and ready to race for $80,000. You bring everybody up to the starting line in front of a capacity crowd at Gainesville Raceway. You've got a hat out there. You've got a celebrity that's holding it, or some beautiful woman, right, that she's holding the bag. And Steve Torrence, instead of getting to have first pick, he's got first draw. He goes up, he draws first, right? And we get to watch as a real spontaneous human moment happens, right? Because we're going to get to see, is he stoked because he drew Leah, or is he devastated because he drew Trip Tatum, or whatever the case may be, his teammate, or he drew Antron Brown, his buddy, right? How much better would that have been? And you get to see Leah.
No, I don't mind the call out though.
I like the idea, but it's the wrong group of people.
I do think that it needs to be the field, and then it goes on whoever had the most points, or whoever, how you finished the year before, because that gives you something to race for. Like, okay, I need to finish. If I finished here, I probably wouldn't have got called out.
That's what they did, right? I mean, they had 8. I mean, I think if you made it too, if you make it too big,
like I don't know. I mean, because
I personally think that
that was confusing. I think that was confusing to some of the fans.
It was confusing to everybody,
but determined was a little bit odd because it was based on qualifying. But then
is Clay not there?
It was based on qualifying. But then Torrance is the number 1. So it's like qualifying, but then we're going to throw qualifying out and put Torrance number 1.
What I'm saying? And I think that's
why
a little bit.
But you're asking these guys to do something that they're uncomfortable doing.
You have to, the whole thing. I'm going to say about the whole deal.
But they won't. But it's easy to say that, and I think that's the problem, T, because that's the mindset NHRA has. We'll just do it. Well, dude, these guys have never done that. I mean, that'd be like me saying, "Hey, T,
somewhere though." That's the whole thing.
But you could create an organic moment by drawing names out of a hat. You draw chips, it fixes it.
I think the biggest tragedy would be for this to be one and done and it not even happen next year. But if we get 2, 3, 4, 5 years in a row of this, by like those later years, these guys will be into this. They'll be experienced. There will be new rivalries. They'll be fired up. And I think that as long as it's relatively the same group, the other part of the problem is that you've got a lot of turnover in some of these.
That's
classes.
What I'm saying.
And a whole different group. And then they're not.
But they can see how the group did it the year before, though. It's like we all had cheese pizza when we were 8 years old, but we have, except Wes, we have put meat on our pizza from now.
But I don't think that's a great analogy. I don't think that's I don't think that works. I really don't. I mean, it wasn't. But I mean, I'm serious. But I'm serious in the fact that I think we're wrong. I mean, if call outs worked, we'd see it where it worked. Like we'd see it in Street Outlaw. It doesn't. The call outs always turn into strategy. It always turns into Kai Kelly calling out Lizzie. It always turns into teammates playing games.
You're calling out
you're always you can't. It's so hard to stop humans from being human.
But these call outs, like in the NHRA though, like we see that with the Street Outlaws because they know that somebody's broke down or hurt or aren't going to be able to make the call.
But I mean, that's the same thing we saw with Steve Torrance calling out Leah. She's struggling. He did that intentionally.
Right. But she is going to make a run. I mean, anything can happen there. So
anything can happen in any of it. But I'm saying if you want to create
it too. But they prefer
a chip draw
because it takes that pressure. It's like, hey, I drew someone that I really want to race. But it's not my fault. It's just who I
just
drew.
don't
so
think
it takes that off of their plate too.
We saw it, and I'm just saying the problem that I have is that you can't wait 5-6 years for this thing to be good. You can't wait 5-6 years for it to manifest. I mean, things move way too fast in this day and age to do that. I mean, in some of these guys won't even be here. Will Doug Coletta still be racing in 5 years? I don't know. What's Top Fuel going to look like in 5 years? What I know is we got a badass field of cars right now. And we've got a badass field of drivers, some of the best drivers that Top Fuel's ever seen. And I truly think we're asking them to do something that is so far out of their comfort zone. But you could have gotten that moment. You could have gotten some, oh, shit. You could have got some big reactions. You could have got some big eyes. You could have seen some disappointment. I guarantee you, what's a great example? If who's on a rail right now that was really running good? Like, I mean, just imagine if Steve Torrance reached into that bag and drew Brittany Force for round 1. Like, all of a sudden, you've got a rivalry. I mean, you got a real rivalry. He just drew the number of the only team to beat him in an NHRA Top Fuel Championship chase the last few years, right?
We've seen that at our race when big money's on the line like that. I mean, Greg Anderson, we were scared for our lives after Greg Anderson drew his teammate for the 3rd round in a row. Something that's out of our control. But
what an awesome storyline that was. And it also it could potentially get one of the badass cars out of the way early, right? Because this to me smacks too much of traditional drag racing, because I think that deal damn near played out. I mean, obviously I think Brittany Force in my opinion, Brittany was the only one who really played ball, because she called out a really fast car. She called out Antron Brown, right? Mm-hmm. Like that call out didn't really make sense to me, to be honest with you. I mean, I've been going, she's doing this purely for entertainment value. She's doing this purely for spectacle, purely for the media attention, because I think it was the most significant happening of all the call outs, right?
Surprised me. I thought she would call out Langdon.
I really did too.
There's some rivalry there too, correct?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of rivalry there. And I just think but you can't expect, and we saw that not everybody is going to deliver on it. I mean, hell, Doug Coletta wasn't even able to make it. But I mean, he sure as hell would have been there on Sunday morning, or he would have been there on Saturday morning, the day they were running the race. And I just love the notion of creating some drama, put all the cars in the lanes. And it's like, listen, if you're going to make any changes, you're going to have to make them up here, right? The strategy is going to be right here.
In fairness to Coletta, I think it was weather related.
Right, I
believe.
And the whole thing was weather related.
Yeah, I agree.
And again, to my initial
I'm not trying to pick it apart. I'm trying to find ways to make it
way better. If they would have pulled it off how they wanted to, this would have been way better. And I still like it. And it's great.
Better than nothing. It's better than not having it.
And the
PepBoys,
I think just maybe some tweaks to it, maybe.
Yeah. PepBoys comes in, they've been involved in the past, but kind of a new. They explained on the PA that it's under a new.
Apparently, they're headed in a new direction with the brand, instead of just being. I don't mean to be just being a parts store, but instead of exclusively selling parts, they're now like a full service, lube and wash type of program. Right. Apparently, is the direction they're headed. It was really cool to see them jump on the side of Salinas, Mike Salinas' top
jeans and. Cardigan and
what's wrong with skinny jeans?
No, I'm just saying they're going to be the Prep Boys.
The Prep Boys. That's like
maybe pinch roll again, bring that back.
Where's the symbols?
That could be the new name for the NHRA Safety Safari, the Prep Boys, right?
Prep Boys.
Prep Boys. That ain't too bad, man. I honestly think, to kind of wrap up our conversation about the Pep Boys All-Star call out, I definitely think victory. I think a very cool deal that has nowhere to go but up. This is a fantastic thing for the sport of drag racing, fantastic thing for all these racers, and I can't wait to see how things unfold at the NHRA US Nationals. That the good Lord's willing, we'll have some great weather this Labor Day weekend when we see these two classes do battle for big money at Lucas Oil Raceway.
It's going to make Indy even more of a must attend, right?